Hello, everyone. I think that we just started. So I'd like to see if Emiliano is on the call. I think he is. Well, first of all, thanks everyone that is being on the call. I believe that we have more or less 60 participants. And Without further ado, I'd like just to give some brief words about Emiliano. Emiliano's been in the market for quite some time, not just as a business accelerator, an ambassador for solar systems, and founder of multiple companies. He's here in the quality of chief executive officer of Raiz Vertical Farms, which he will surely explain what it is. And the purpose of this seminal, let's call it this very first webinar, is actually to bootstrap the not just the blockchain executive program from Porto Business School, but also to share some thoughts and some ideas and some insights from blockchain and the circular economy. So, without further ado, I'll just pass the word to Emiliano, and thank you all for joining us. And if you have any questions, please post them on the chat, and we'll try to answer them as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Rui, for the kind words. Great to be here. Hello, everyone tuning in from LinkedIn
Good.
and beyond. Just confirming you can hear me well. So, yes, thanks for the kind introduction. As mentioned, I'm going to be here as CEO of Raiz Vertical Farms. And yes, I would like to share with you a brief presentation of the power of blockchain and specifically DeFi in the circular economy and impact investing. So, yes, please, I'm going to ask the team to share the screen now. I believe you're able to see the presentation. Again, as Professor Roy kindly stated, let's try to keep this as much as possible an open conversation or even a written one. So please feel free to comment or question in the chat, and I'll be happy to take your questions into considerations, and I will even myself be asking some questions. So as much interaction as possible, that's best. So just to get on it, blockchain and the circular economy. I know there might be some heads boggling around how can blockchain be sustainable? How can blockchain be paired with the circular economy? So this is something that we do want to address and demystify. But let's first start with what is the most relevant aspect as of right now. How can we apply that technology and what actually is decentralized finance or blockchain? So if you could please go to the first slide. So going a bit deeper into what decentralized finance is, please again put your comments into what you think that is, and I'll be happy to take a look at your thoughts and try to nail them with the overarching flow of the presentation. But long story short, decentralized finance is an alternative finance mechanism without a central controlling agent, right? So traditional banking and traditional financial systems always have an intermediary, being a bank or a central monetary system that controls both let's say, the credit and the printing of money. So what is arising and what's currently being developed in the blockchain space is a new system in which communities, creators, and general agents can interact within each other, create new financial tools, and just transact value in a way that previously wasn't possible between each other. So peer to peer without a necessary intermediary agent that has yes, this key mechanism that are smart contracts. We'll go a bit more into in depth into what that is, but it's basically a coded mechanism that allows this new economic model to be what we have here on the left to be trustless. So you don't have to rely on the other agent doing what he said he would do, because you know that as soon as the algorithm completes a certain task, or the if and then function is completed, you know that that specific agent will, for example, transact value, right? So you eliminate trust from the equation, and you just rely on the mathematical and the algorithmic protocol to perform a certain transaction. Then it's open, right? So we love, let's say, blockchain and these new ecosystems because they are open, allowing more people potentially without access to banking, for example, in developing countries, to have access to new financial systems, and also methods all the way from loaning to staking, and to creating value of their own, even without being certified, let's say, by a central entity. And it's permissionless, right? So there's different kinds of blockchains that can allow us to interact and create values in ways that haven't been possible before. I'm just picking up in a question here. What role will communities and justice play in the conversation about circular economy? We'll get to circular economy in a way, but touching on communities and justice for this part of the equation, I think community is a key aspect for the decentralized finance ecosystem, because community is a way in which creators, for example, can interact with other creators. And there is no blockchain without community, right? So every blockchain project is reliant on a community, and that's something we as Raiz have been seeing more and more. So in order to be able to deploy a blockchain protocol, you have to have a solid community. You can have amazing code, you can have amazing value proposition, but if there is no community, then it has no value at all, right? So it's important to understand that every new protocol and every new technological integration without a community is worthless, right? And also the justice part of things, it comes back to the protocol, right? So and how is it coded, and how are the governance mechanisms installed in the code, so that we can have a, let's say, fruitful community and a fruitful interaction. We'll go deeper into that. Next slide, please. Now, again, the DeFi world is something that's fully rising. Three key characteristics of this decentralized finance ecosystem are investing, staking, and loans, right? So investing is just putting money into an asset that you expect that will grow or perform well. Staking is this kind of new yield generating mechanism. For those that are advanced in this topic, I won't go into too much detail, but it's just a way that we can make, let's say, digital assets grow instead of just keeping them and holding them, or holding them as steady assets. We can just invest them into protocols that can generate a yield. And loans is just like having a loan for money with your, let's say, crypto as collateral, right? The current total value locked in DeFi or decentralized finance right now is over 230 billion, and it's rising. Of course, it's fluctuating, but the trend is always upwards in the long term, and we expect this to keep growing, right? So right now, we know that it's mostly in financial assets and financial protocols, but it's diversifying towards more impact related aspects. Again, just to make DeFi a bit more clear, and please feel free to ask more questions. DeFi is permissionless, transparent because you are able to transact and go back to the transactions that are happening in the blockchain every time, right? So every blockchain transaction is always related on the blockchain. So you can see from where one transaction is going from one wallet to the other, and it's always there. It's immutable. So you can't take back that action, you can't hide that action, but everyone within the whole ecosystem can see that. So it has that benefit of being transparent. It's programmable, as mentioned, that you don't have to rely on someone else, but because the code will execute as it's supposed to execute, and it's interoperable, right? So that's where it gets most interesting. So maybe, I guess, everyone has heard of Bitcoin, of Ethereum. We particularly are working with the Near protocol, but there's hundreds of different protocols working on blockchain, and we see a future with different blockchains, right? So it's a cross-chain world, and it's important that they are interoperable, and you're able to transact assets and value within different blockchains. Now, I know this can be a lot to swallow immediately, but these are, let's say, the core yes, characteristics of DeFi and the blockchain aspect on the financial side. Before moving forward, I would like to ask the audience, like, how can we apply this to, let's say, impact and the circular economy and climate action? Please feel free to drop ideas in the chat. I'm just going to give a couple of seconds to do that. So how can we apply blockchain? How can we apply the principles of decentralized finance into climate action? And if we can please go to the next slide, it would be great. So I'm going to be waiting for responses and comments here on the internal chat, but we can start moving forward with impact tokenization and a brief overview of what refi is, or this new rising term that stands for regenerative finance. So you might have heard of regenerative agriculture. And that's something that's having a wide awareness and rise, let's say, in the general agriculture and reforestation world. But refi is the mix, let's say, between DeFi and blockchain and regeneration, right? So the whole refi movement is, in a way, looking to do climate action through the whole amount of value and money and really smart people working on the blockchain ecosystem, right? So before going into detail, there's this comment: loans to people on emerging markets. Definitely, you can apply this kind of incentives and deploy this kind of capital for emerging markets. Specifically, I would say for initiatives that are addressing a social and climate need. Right? You can also have emerging markets funding for new opportunities that have this climate action in them as a core, right? But if we move to the next slide, please, we will be able to see many applications that are being developed, right? So again, regenerative finance is a way that crypto and blockchain can mitigate climate change. It can democratize activism. So what does it mean? It means, like, before or usually we have big investors able to invest in activism and reforestation, etc. But through blockchain technology, we can allow the retail investor of any size to also invest in climate positive actions and have actually a stake into what is going to be the new digital economy for climate, right? I'm just picking up this monetizing carbon credits along the supply chain. Absolutely. And we actually see on the bottom of this right hand graph or yes, table, different projects that are working for environmental protection and regeneration. Many of them, as stated, are carbon credits, and what I will go a bit into more depth of this, but what this climate and carbon projects are looking to do is to really simplify, decentralize, and again take out the intermediary in the carbon credit markets, so it can be both more transparent, more immediate, and being trustless, right? So you don't have to rely on a central agent that is validating that, and you're eliminating human mistake, and you're also making that more efficient and traceable, right? Just picking up another comment here, impact outcomes are achieved as measured by an algorithm and executes a payment to a service provider. That's totally right, right? So if we can go to the next slide, please. We have data on chain and off chain, right? So this is also a quite interesting thing. So we can incentivize cooperation and collaboration and just measuring of different values from, let's say, the real world to the on-chain data, right? So exactly, you have sensors, you have algorithms, and you have these data protocols that are absorbing data from the real world and are able to tokenize them, and in turn do a payment or a reward to a contractor or to an agent that is doing something beneficial for the environment, right? So again, refi is where crypto, carbon, and climate meet, and it will allow us as we grow, and it's already doing it. We're going to give a couple of examples just briefly, but it's already allowing for more initiatives to do that proper transaction measuring, and then being able to receive funding for the deployment of new projects, and also like bringing forth on the ground climate action. So yes, I think one of the challenges, and it's something that we are actually working on right now at Raiz. I'll go into more depth again, but is how do we link? And I think that's also a question not to be answered right now, but I think it's valuable for the audience. So that's something that all the way since I've been into blockchain, like 5 years ago, it's the very early stages, and we have to focus on the ramps, right? So how can you link both financial assets for hard assets, and in this case carbon farms, etc.? How do you link them? What's the let's say the on-chain ramp from traditional hard assets, let's say web 2, that is the internet, into the web 3 sphere, right? So that's something that I encourage you to go into more depth, as there is also a great opportunity both for business and let's say climate impact. So how do we link the traditional assets, and how do we link climate action into the on-chain world? Can we go to the next slide, please? This is a good question. Why aren't more companies doing it? I think again, it's totally a good logic. It's something that is starting to be done, but it has its level of complexity, right? It's not something that anyone can do that easily. You need a lot of partners. You need the solid token economics. You need a solid developing team. And right now, there's not a lot of developers like that are actually coding. So that I would also encourage everyone to maybe not go fully into coding, but yes, start to have an understanding of how the smart contracts work, and maybe if you are interested in deploying a solution, getting in touch with developers that can also help you yes, code that solution and have more of a grassroots understanding.
Emiliano,
But there are yes,
Emiliano, if I
please,
can add, yeah, if I can
of
add
course.
my 2 cents to this question, which is, this is, we've been barraged with very good comments and very great questions. I'm really, I'm really very positively impressed. And the question about if this is so great, why is it and compelling? Why aren't any more companies doing this already? And this is a great question because it goes to the core of 2 things. One is psychology, and the other one is economics. So, in terms of
Mhm.
psychology, it's called resistance to change. So, by nature, people are resistant to change, and I think that this is something that will have to address, and the course addresses some of that in terms of how can new players of blockchain offer different approaches to resistance to change. That's one thing, which is more of a psychological approach than an economical approach. The other point is actually the economical aspect, which relates to what are the right incentives set up so
Absolutely.
that circular economy projects become a success. So, just adding my 2 cents, but these great questions, great comments, great to have this all this crowd on board.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments. And I think, yeah, incentives are the key, right? So incentive is a key word for coordinating climate action, but also for any blockchain integration. So if you don't have the right incentives aligned between different players, it won't work, right? So it's community incentives, and then like surpassing the resistance to change that Professor Hui was mentioning, totally on spot. Can we have the presentation again, please? Beautiful. So even though there's still a low number of companies doing it, there are companies doing it. We're going to go a bit into a couple of examples. So Flow Carbon, they are yeah, dedicated to preserving carbon sinks by leveraging Web3 technology, right? So they basically are tokenizing forests and being able to, again, register data from the real world on chain, having carbon credits and allowing more people to both invest, register, track, and be able to, yeah, to benefit both financially and socially from the development of carbon sinks, both the development and the restoration or just maintaining of carbon sinks, right? So this is Flow Carbon. I invite you to take a look at it. If we can go to the next one, please. This is OFP. They are very good friends of us, specifically because they are working with the NEAR protocol. They are scaling forestation. I would say they are one of the most rapidly growing projects that basically are tokenizing more forests worldwide. Yeah, you name it, Asia, Latin America, the US, worldwide, they are tokenizing or implementing different mechanisms to measure, report, and validate the carbon captured by the forests. And that is incentivizing, again, incentives, more adoption, more reforestation, and more on-chain data so that we can have, let's say, more projects being or more trees being planted, but not only that, you can have the certainty that they are being handled in the right way, growing and actually capturing the carbon that they are supposed to capture. Next slide, please. This is just going a bit deeper into the OFP example. So it's partnering up with project operators, and the project operators are incentivized to join because they have access to MRV tools, which again is measuring, reporting, and validation, and unlock carbon financing. Right. So just again touching on some of the good comments that were done by the audience. So yes, I think the incentive there is that you're able to really comply with what you say you will do in terms of capturing carbon, and you have the possibility to unlock financing for new projects of reforestation. Then you have the validators, which is very important. So the validators are also using blockchain technology to verify forest data around the world, both with blockchain, IoT, AI. So they're able to really validate that the forests are doing what they are supposed to be doing, right? Because one of the previous, let's say, hurdles of traditional reforestation is that sometimes the trees were planted, but there wasn't any proper follow up, right? Or they weren't really nourished. In this way, the validators are ensuring that the forests are effectively growing and capturing carbon. And on the other hand, you have the funding partners, right? So funding partners are incentivized to fund the development of new reforestation projects because they will also have, let's say, carbon credits and an upside within the whole say, token economy of open forest protocol. So this is really something that is inspiring for us, and that we invite you to take a look. Just coming to a question, this company that decide to go in this direction require new kinds of manager. What skills should we be developing? I think that's a good question. Definitely, I think there's something that should be developed in terms of, as I mentioned, technological understanding. Let's say if we're talking with business, I myself have a business background, and I knew by I don't know 5 6 years ago that I wasn't going to become a coder. That was not my key skill. So I founded a blockchain lab that was back in LATAM, right? So at least to have an understanding of how developers are thinking, what can you really do to deploy those skills. I would also say you need some understanding of psychology, as Professor Hui was saying, right? So you need to understand like what are the incentives and what are the incentive mechanisms that you can put into play to really interact with different agents, right? So it's not only now about the business and one specific entity, but how you interact with the whole ecosystem. Okay, so before moving forward, I'm going to start talking a bit about Raiz vertical farms. I would like to see if anyone has any idea of, yeah, how could blockchain be applied to urban farming, vertical farming? Please let us know if you have any ideas. Meanwhile, I will answer a couple of the previous questions. So can we explain briefly how to tokenize a forest, and are they using Google Maps satellite images to backtrack? They are using satellite images. I wouldn't like to go too much into depth into this because I'm not an expert, but please, I would refer you. I'm just going to write here if you can go OFP near protocol. They have a white paper, and I would invite you to read the whole white paper. It's this slide we're showing actually. Um, so we can have a better understanding. But yes, long story short, is using Internet of Things, sensors, seeing how they are being developed, satellite images and heat waves to see how much capture of carbon is taking place, and then registering that specific data into the blockchain, right? So you're not going to tokenize the whole forest. You're going to tokenize, let's say, specific attributes that are being captured, or that are being managed by a forest in the blockchain, right? So it's like having, I do know that, for example, OFP has an NFT of a specific plot of land. I believe it's a hectare of land. So you are creating NFTs out of a hectare of land, and that NFT will have a metadata that corresponds to all the data that has, for example, the number of plants, the number of supposed carbon tons that will be captured, and then you will match it to the actual capturing that is being registered by the satellite imagery and the algorithms. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I invite you to go deeper into the white paper of OFP. What about energy costs increasing? I think that's a bit for the vertical farming side. Now, can we go to the next slide, please? So what is Raiz? What are we doing? So this is our flagship farm. This will be it's being built at the moment. You're all invited. On July 2nd, we'll have the launch event in Lisbon. This is happening in a cultural space called Arroz Studios here in Beato Marvila, a rising part of Lisbon. And what we basically do is a network of vertical farms. I'm sorry, Professor Rui, would you want to say something?
Well, I can answer the energy cost increasing question because it has a multiple question inside that specific question. So it relates to inflation as well as probably what the participant wants to know is what about protocols slash consensus models that are less or more cost effective or less cost burdening than the previous ones that we've had. But we can go for the cost, the energy cost increasing question after you finish.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I was planning to tackle it in two ways. One of them was like I think relating it to the vertical farms. So in terms of energy, which is one of the biggest hurdles for vertical farming, we are using solar panels, right? So we just last month installed two sets of solar panels with an inverter and storage, so that will help us cover the energy needs for the farmers, right? So that's very important for us as a vertical farming company and as a controlled environment software company, because we do want to keep our energy costs low and be as sustainable as possible, right? We can go deeper into that as well with Rui, and I'd like to share just some things of smart grids and distributed energy resources. But for now, I think we can focus on this vertical farming aspect, if that's okay. So it's building a network of vertical farms. This will be the first tokenized vertical farm worldwide. And yes, our mission is to have transformative farms that really bridge the gap between food production and consumption, right? So again, as you see here, this will be a farm that really interacts with the consumers, that you have rotating hydroponic barrels on top, and you have a technological environment that is able to provide food all through the year. So effectively transforming our food system, and yes, just ushering us into a new age of food production and consumption. Where does blockchain fit in here? So one of the biggest hurdles beyond energy is the capex, so or yes, the, let's say, the upfront investment needed to deploy a vertical farm, right? So after, yeah, let's say months of investigating R&D, etc., and participating with the near protocol, we saw that one way to yeah, go around it is to actually have farm shares. So what if you as an operator, or we as Raiz, as a company, didn't have to fund the development of a farm with one single entity? What if we can fund it and have farm shares divided by 1,000 people, right? And that's what we're doing right now. We're tokenizing the systems, the hydroponic systems, and we're doing fractions of the whole farm. So we can have, for example, 1,000 shares of our flagship farm. So that allows both to reduce the costs for a farm in terms of how much one has to spend, but also it unlocks a set of value flow for communities and investors. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is just a very wide scale vision of how we see the development of our network. So we have on the bottom the DeFi user or refi investor who does the investment through our DAO or our DApp. The DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. A DApp is a decentralized application. It's basically, yes, a contract, a smart contract, that organization that can channel funds to the development of new vertical farms. So let's say Raiz as a DAO funds the development of new farms worldwide. People or investors get a farm share, which in turn entails them for yields and returns corresponding to the returns of that vertical farm and to the network of farms, right? So on the right side, we see a vertical farm that just operates in a traditional way, selling plants to local community in exchange of money. These farms are profitable and yield returns back to the investors, right? If there's any question, please write them. But this is like the general dynamics. I am an investor. I am, let's say, in Hong Kong. This is a farm happening in Lisbon. I, as an investor from the outside world, I invest, I get a farm share, and that farm share allows me to have, let's say, a passive income and a yield from the returns happening on the farm. And as the farm network grows, you will also have a small fee of appreciation of your token, right? So part of the profits will go to the general token pool, so that the investors can also have an appreciation, an upside from the whole vertical farming network. This is the central and the right side of things. As we progress, we're going to go deeper into what we saw before, the impact tokenization side of things. So by that, we need a certain amount of scale, and we are implementing a life cycle assessment and protocols, so that we're able to collect all our data and quantify how much CO2 we are effectively saving in comparison to traditional agriculture, right? So we are saving not only CO2, but also land and water, and we're going to register that into a token. Again, through the NEAR protocol, we're going to have an impact token, an NFT, that will go back to the wallet of the DeFi user, right? So the way it will work is, I invest in Raiz, I invest in a farm share, I get my return in terms of financial benefits, but I'm also getting a impact token, right? So I'm also effectively contributing to a climate action, and that will come back to my wallet. Eventually, I can keep it, or I can also trade that impact token or carbon token on a secondary market as a secondary revenue stream. So I hope that's clear. I'm just going to some questions here. Would green offices and the CO2 of the plants trapped, captured, or square meters of land saved per kilogram cropped um, gardens? Okay. I didn't get that question
I
precisely
believe
here.
this question relates to the impact token. So it seems that the participant is actually trying to understand if the impact token is just on CO2 trapped, or is it more on other savings like water saved, or even save kilograms
Right.
of crop grown in vertical farm, in this case gardens. So this is a great question. I believe that you have two streams of the business. One stream is actually what somebody mentioned here, equity crowdfunding. So you're capturing investors, impact investors, into building more and more vertical farms. But the
Yeah.
next stream of the business is actually building an impact token that monetizes carbon capture and probably other potential savings for other, let's call it SDG savings.
That's correct. That's correct. And if we go to the next slide, um, that will also shed some light, or even to the 14, like two next, then we'll come back, sorry, but just touching on that question. So we do have that mapped out, and I believe it's true, right? So it's not only about the carbon, which we would reduce in terms of transport and land freed up to regenerate, etc., but also in terms of water and the increase, let's say, on the social side of sustainable diets, right? So again, it's a whole impact token that is still being developed and defined, but it's not only about carbon itself, but the co-benefits being water, land, and social impact as a whole, right? And just touching on why blockchain, because I know sometimes it can be misleading, or it seems that blockchain is not necessary. But for us, for example, it's a key aspect for scalability, right? So we can scale up without the requirements of let's say this whole capex on the company. We can scale up the community and the operators in a global manner, and it again allows us to do our operations in a more traceable manner, right? So it gives us traceability from seed to harvest. Can we go back 2 slides, please, to a near neutral Now, this is the blockchain protocol we are working with. It's called NEAR. Again, I invite you to check it. It's the first climate neutral blockchain. So they are partnering up with South Pole, which allows them to offset all their emissions. But actually, their emissions are much, much lower than, for example, Bitcoin or other protocols, because they have this sharding mechanism, just let's say less complex than proof of work. It's a proof of stake mechanism to validate transactions in a seamless manner without using so much energy to validate one transaction. And so the blockchain itself is, they say, infinitely scalable, and each transaction takes very little amount of time and very little amount of energy. I invite you to create a wallet as well, and it should be like very easy to do a transaction and actually get onboarded with Near. If you can go to the next slide, please. This was just a play we did with NFTs, merging the physical and the digital worlds last year. Again, for example, on the left, you have some plants that you can uh, exchange for real life plants. So you have an NFT, it's a utility NFT that you can actually exchange for plants, right? We partner up with some artists here that develop this. The one in the middle and all the way to the right, it's a subscription for 12 months of plants. You also have memberships. You can sponsor a barrel. So those were like first, let's say, prototypes. It was different kinds of iterations that allowed us to see like how can we really merge the physical and the digital worlds, both for people that are inside of Lisbon, in this case, which is where our farm will be, but also people that are outside. How can we provide benefits through digital assets connected to real world assets like vertical farms? I hope this is nice, and we're going to share the links as well, of this yes, mint based store and other assets that we have. Um, so one token encapsulates the different dimensions in itself, carbon reductions, or the investor receives different types of tokens. That's a good question, and we're going to encapsulate, right? What? So it's one token that has, let's say, as a core, the carbon reduction or the CO2, like the carbon credit functioning, but it also has like co-benefits attached to that and to the metadata, like how much water have you saved, what this represents in terms of sustainable diets, and how much land has been freed up. Yes, Rui, I believe you were commenting.
Now, this is great questions, and I think the fact that some of the participants want to receive the. I'm not sure about the recording, but because I don't know if exactly the recording will be made available. But at least if some part of the presentation is not confidential, if you can make it available, that would be great as well.
We will, and yeah, I hope we will have the emails of the participant or just some kind of contact that we can share. Of course, the presentation, even small token of appreciation. So we'll be happy to share. And we're just seeing here that the presentation will become available on YouTube. So we'll have that available too. If we can just come back to the presentation to finish it off, please. So this again, it's are the NFTs we developed. Next slide is something we already mentioned in terms of scalability, traceability, and the ability to scale and to do our operations globally. And finally, just encouraging you to take a wider look, both into Raiz, but into refi and the general climate action and climate movement, because it's time to act beyond sustainability being a buzzword, beyond impact, tokenization, beyond blockchain. I think it's just time to act. And the reason that we are here, and I believe also many of the audience are here, is because an interest in how can we leverage technology for climate action, for the good of the environment and society. So I would really encourage you, yes, go and learn and go in depth and ask questions and criticize and just go deeper. But again, it's time to act, right? So let's just get our minds and technology into action. Yes, I will remain available for questions. If you want to reach out via
Yeah.
LinkedIn, please feel free to do so.
I
Always happy to share more resources.
Yeah, I think that I have some good news. At least two good news. The first one is that this course is actually building a network of mentors. So any student that wants to access not just some of the speakers, but as well some of the faculties, they will have access to the faculty as a mentor for the project. And in the case of Emiliano, is one of the leading and pioneer mentors of the course. So if you're one of the students that have enrolled in the course and that want to actually set up and build a new project, you will not only have support from the faculty, but from the network of mentors that we're building. The another good news is that we've recently invited Kathy Mulligan from Imperial College, and she has accepted to be another faculty member for this course, and she is responsible for Decentral, which is a blockchain lab that is mostly focused on blockchain for social good. So any student that wants to not just go into refi or not just go into SDG or deep tech on SDG, but also on blockchain for social good. We're just introducing a new mentor and a new faculty that is top-notch quality faculty for Porto Business School. And additionally, I think that we are being available for any questions. We're being made available for any questions during this webinar. So, any ideas that you want to share or want to just experiment, we can leave our contacts from Porto Business School, and you can just drop us a line, and then we'll get back to you.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Absolutely. I maintain myself
Okay.
open as well. Just wanted to answer a couple of these questions. If the carbon reductions and water savings will be considered via the life cycle assessment, and that's yes. So no ad hoc values. We'll do an LCA. We are currently working on developing the life cycle assessment, and that's the data that will be tokenized as well, right? So comparing that to specific yeah, traditional agriculture and what's the difference, and that's what will be tokenized. If I will try to mentor some projects or give complete freedom to the project to build on the vertical farm, I think I'm always up for freedom, and whatever you want to build, we're here to help. So yeah, no, no competition. Competition is good, and I think the more minds we have thinking on this, like not only vertical farming but social and environmental challenges, that's best, right? So we only want more of these. So yeah, happy
Yeah.
to support.
Well, if
Great.
there aren't any other questions, and if Emiliano does not have any other statements or answers, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone, and especially our first guest speaker of the blockchain flat factory. It has been a pleasure. As you said, there was a lot to digest. I'm happy that this will be posted on YouTube as well as the webinar will be made or the webinar presentation will be made available. If you guys that all everyone that has been present would like to just post in your remarks, we're more than happy to read them and just to take them into account and always improve. So I'm just getting some fantastic webinars. So Emiliano, congratulations! This was a great webinar, and
Thank you.
thank you all for your presence. And hope to see you guys soon in the near future.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, thank you.